What's going on, y'all? Is Victor Wembanyama the next world champion? Or can he be? Do you see comparisons of Victor Wembanyama to world champion? Now, every now and then you have somebody in the league or even in various sports that comes along and they'll compare them to the greats, right? Right offhand, they'll be like, yeah, he's the next MJ, or he's the next, Barry Sanders, or he's the next, Joe Montana, blah blah blah. The list goes on. And Victor Wembanyama, when he was first coming out, I more saw similarities to a guy like Ralph Sampson. Only difference is that with Ralph Sampson, his career didn't pan out like it should have, because it was cut short due to injury. But you got to think about it. Ralph Sampson was something that the league had never seen before, and as talented as he was for his size, being able to do things that a normal guy well above 7'3" would have been able to do. Now, Victor Wembanyama is 7'4", 7'5". He's got a wingspan of 8 foot and beyond. Now, when you're trying to compare him to a guy like Wilt, first and foremost, to even be in the class with Wilt, we're not even going to talk about, the scoring factor and fundamental things of that nature. We have to talk about the durability factor, right? We have to talk about the stamina, and we have to talk about the endurance, and all these, the health. We have to take the health into consideration, because Wilt, everybody like to talk about, his agility, his athleticism, his scoring, what he was able to do, and that sort of thing, offensively and stuff, and defensively, and rebounding and stuff. But a lot of people don't really necessarily talk about the health factor and how healthy Wilt Chamberlain was. He was healthy enough to only miss just a few games in his career, and the big part of the game, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm driving. The most games that he missed was when he played with the Lakers, and that's when he had suffered an injury, and he only played, I think, like 12 games or something like that. But besides that, Wilt was always good for well over 75 plus games, and playing, all of the games. And then on top of that, playing pretty much almost the entire game. Not really, taking a breather and stuff like that. So if you take that into consideration, we have to talk about that first. Can Victor Wembanyama, does he have Wilt's type of health, his type of endurance to be able to play long stretches, and to be able, and of course, it's a different era. We have to take that into consideration too. Times were different. But see, that right there is another argument too as well. Because we have to look at what time period both of these guys were playing in. Okay, let's talk about the social, the society factor. Okay, we're talking about a time when it was racism, segregation, let's take the cultural factor. You were able to smoke in arenas, uh, people were, yelling at the black players. There were rarely that many black players on teams when Wilt had first started out. Just all type of differences in comparison to what you see right now. We have to take that into consideration, and the reason why I bring that up is because it's way easier than what it was back then. Back then, he's had to deal with African American players and black players. They had to deal with so much, so their mentality was a little bit more stronger. Now, I'll give Victor Wembanyama this. He did come out and he said, it was in an article, he said that he likes to be coached hard. He likes to be yelled at when he was speaking in reference to Pop. So that right there automatically tells me that Victor Wembanyama wants to improve and everything. And I've always seen the factor of Victor Wembanyama wanting to not shy away from getting better. That Mamba mentality, so to speak. Not compared to him to Kobe Bryant's mental factor, but it's there. Okay. Now, another thing is that Wilt holds 70 plus records. I think 72, 68 records, by himself, including the 100-point record, which still stands today, and I think he had 55 plus rebounds. But he holds over 68 records, which probably are not going to be broken. Okay, and that's from an individual standpoint. They're not going to be broken. And then on top of that, he played. I think he averaged well over 40 plus minutes a game throughout his whole entire career. So, if Victor Wembanyama can do that, then maybe we can have that conversation. But right now, it's still too early. And then this is another thing too. I've only seen clips of Wilt Chamberlain. I did watch a few games. They would show a few games like on NBA Classic and stuff. See, that's another thing that I think is a big difference. Now, let me jump off this subject for a second. It does pertain to Wilt Chamberlain, right? The only reason I don't have Wilt Chamberlain as my starting center in my top 5 because my starting center is Hakeem Olajuwon, and that's never going to change. Shout out to Two Raw for TV. I think I've talked about this before. Two Raw, guys like Two Raw for TV, the one LVZ, no buck dancing allowed. Go sub to their pages, LWC Brothers. The thing that they put in perspective for me, and I had to realize too, because a lot of people ask me, why do you have Hakeem Olajuwon as your starting center? Such is the same question that I get about having Dennis Rodman as my starting power forward, which I've talked about before. And I told them that, I thought like as a center, he was very, extremely fundamentally sound, and he had a good crisp footwork. He was a very versatile center, and the most important thing is, I said, his defensive prowess, and I said that he's the all-time leader in blocks. However, it's good to have historians in the LWC community to put you up on game, and this was a while back. They had said that if they had counted blocks when Wilt was playing, at the beginning when he was playing, he would have murdered, Hakeem Olajuwon in terms of an all-time leader in blocks because he blocked so many shots back then, but they just weren't counted, right? And so, and then plus I didn't watch him, but had I think if I would have watched Wilt Chamberlain play and hearing his stories and stuff like that, I would have had Wilt Chamberlain as my starting center. But I don't really agree with the fact that some people, they'll be like, oh yeah, well, you know what, I got Oscar Robertson as my starting power point guard, and you're like 20 something years old, and I'll be like, okay, well, what did you like about Oscar Robertson? Did you actually watch him? Did you actually watch him play? Well, no, I've seen clips and highlights and stuff like that. There's a big difference, and yes, they probably appreciate you for putting him there, but I need somebody that I actually watched play, if that makes any sense. So, but anyway, that's the only reason I don't have Wilt Chamberlain as my starting center. Everybody else I watched play. That's on my roster. But getting back to Wilt Chamberlain and getting back to Victor Wembanyama, I wasn't sold on Victor Wembanyama until he had played, I think it was in preseason. And that's when I started to really pay attention to this guy. Because they were talking about him, here and there. Shout out to Ticket TV. He had talked about him. I think he was one of the few that was talking about him and Tura. I was like, I don't know. And then he started to grow on me. And I started to pay attention to him. And you say what you want. When he first came in to the league, oh yes, he was taking the league, by storm. There was a lot of hype around him. Now I'm not gonna say it was the LeBron James hype. Well, yeah, it might have been up there. And he actually lived to the hype. San Antonio was winning games, and stuff like that. But that's how it is for a rookie. You're gonna come out with all that energy, but you're gonna realize there's a difference between playing, at the most maybe 20 games or so, coming where he came from, in comparison to playing an 82, if you make the playoff plus game season. It's a grind, and especially with the travel, with the media. You also got to take your attrition into account, because you might be sore, you might have, because he sprained his ankle before, and honestly, I didn't think he was going to continue playing, but he kept on playing. So that's also what I noticed about Victor Wembanyama, that you could probably make some comparison to him. But me, right offhand, I saw Ralph Sampson, not Wilt Chamberlain. But I think a lot of people, they looked at Wilt because Wilt was something that nobody had ever seen before coming into the league, and he was a dominating guy. Now, I just want him to pan out in the league. I don't want him to go down as, oh man, he could have been this or he could have been that. No, I want Victor Wembanyama to pan out in the league. Right now it's a little bit too early. We have to at least can this guy at least play 8 seasons first before we start making all these different comparisons, because we don't know what he's going to add to his game. We don't know how his body is going to look 5 years from now. We don't know what type of changes that the league is going to make 5, maybe 8+ years from now. Because the league could go back to playing more a traditional style of basketball. And what I mean by that, it could go from inside out. I'm just saying it may, you never know. And things could change. But I don't see that happening. And another thing is that he's able to shoot at a distance that they weren't necessarily doing that. The big man wasn't necessarily doing that back then. I meant to throw that in earlier. So that's another thing that you have to take into account. And he's shooting. He's very accurate for his size, shooting from the 3-point range. Back in those days, that was beyond belief for you to step out like that. Man, the coach, you would get yelled at and probably pulled out, and probably wouldn't even play for doing something like that. But now it's accepted. So those are my thoughts on it. I meant to talk about this a while back because they were making these comparisons, but I never really got to give my spiel on it though. Y'all tell me what you think. Leave your comments. Make sure you like the video, share it, subscribe, and also hit the notification. Do all that good stuff. And I'll get at y'all later.